All right, are you ready for some drama? Because we're about to step right into a cosmic courtroom.
Oh, this is going to be good.
It is. We're looking at Isaiah 1.23 today, and let me tell you, these verses, they're like a legal showdown.
With some pretty intense accusations.
Yeah, and a few unexpected guests. Animals in the courtroom, you'll see what I mean. We've got two different analyses of this passage, and there's so much going on beneath the surface. Way more than you might think at first glance.
It really pulls you in. I mean, right away, Isaiah sets the scene with God calling on heaven and earth to be witnesses.
Right. Like, wow, talk about an audience. What's the point of bringing the whole universe into this?
Well, to understand that, we have to think about ancient Near Eastern legal practices. Back then, covenants and treaties, those weren't casual agreements, you know.
Yeah, they were serious business.
Very serious. And they often involved witnesses to make them official, to give them weight.
Like a legal stamp of approval.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, get this, sometimes those witnesses, they were elements of nature, like mountains or rivers.
Really? So it was like saying, hey, mountain, you saw this happen.
Precisely. So when God calls on heaven and earth, he's using that same legal framework.
So it's like he's making a public declaration, everyone pay attention, this is important.
Exactly. It takes from a personal issue to something much bigger. It's not just God being upset with a few people. It's a breach of a sacred covenant.
That impacts, well, everything.
A whole universe.
Yeah.
But what is it that God's people have done? What's all the commotion about?
Right. What's the accusation?
Okay, well, this is where it gets even more interesting. God uses this incredibly powerful metaphor. He says, "Children have I reared and brought up."
But they have rebelled against me.
Yeah. Powerful, right?
It's so emotional. Like when I first read that, it was that heartbroken parent feeling that really got me.
I can see that.
You don't always see deities portrayed that way, you know?
Oh, no, not really. We're used to gods and goddesses being,
right.
well, distant, powerful figures, not necessarily emotionally invested parents.
Right. But here, Isaiah gives us this glimpse into God's heart. He's not just angry, she's hurt.
Disappointed, yeah. And the specific word used for rebelled in Hebrew, fakufashah, is significant.
You were telling me about that before we started recording.
Oh, yeah. In ancient legal texts, pasha was often used for breaking treaties and covenants.
So again, that legal context comes through.
Yes. But it's not just a cold legal term. It has this sense of betrayal, of violation of trust, especially in a parent-child relationship.
It makes it so personal. This covenant isn't just a list of rules. It's built on love and trust.
And that's what makes the rebellion so painful. And, you know, this portrayal of divine parentage, it's so different from other ancient cultures.
How so?
Well, think about the Egyptian pharaohs. They were considered sons of Ra.
Oh, right.
And the Mesopotamian kings, they claimed divine lineage. But the emphasis there, it was all about power and authority.
Not really vulnerability or emotional connection.
Exactly. So Isaiah's portrayal of God as a heartbroken parent, it's revolutionary.
It challenges our whole idea of what it means to be divine.
Absolutely. And it sets the stage for how we understand God's character throughout the book of Isaiah.
Okay, so we've got this cosmic courtroom, a heartbroken parent, and then Isaiah throws in this totally unexpected comparison.
Oh, yeah. The animals.
Oxen and donkeys in the courtroom. Where did that come from?
I love this part. Isaiah says, "The ox knows its owner, and the donkey its master's crib."
But Israel does not know. My people do not understand.
Oh, it's brilliant. And a little bit funny.
Wait, so even a stubborn donkey knows where to get its food. But God's chosen people can't figure things out.
That's the point. Isaiah uses animals that are, well, not known for their smarts. But even they have this instinct to recognize their master and their source of sustenance.
It's like he's saying, if a donkey can get it, what's your excuse?
Exactly. It highlights how ridiculous Israel's rebellion is. They've been given so much. Divine revelation, a special covenant.
A guidance from prophets.
And yet they can't even grasp the most basic truths. Truths that even simple animals understand.
It's the image of the feeding trough that gets me. The osis in Hebrew. It represents that place of provision.
Sustenance, nourishment, yeah.
And it's like Isaiah saying, hello, you're missing the obvious here. You're so focused on the wrong things that you've forgotten where your true sustenance comes from.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
About our own lives, for sure.
What are we missing? What are we overlooking?
What feeding troughs are we ignoring while we chase things that don't really satisfy us?
Are we so busy with our own desires that we've lost sight of the one who truly provides for us?
It's a question everyone can relate to, I think. But I have a feeling there's more to this story.
Oh, definitely. This is just the beginning.
So much more to unpack.
This passage sets the stage for some major themes that Isaiah explores, especially these ideas of knowledge and understanding.
Knowledge and understanding.
Let's save that for our next deep dive. As we dig into Isaiah, it's clear that this parent-child thing, it's not just a one-time thing.
Right. It keeps coming up.
Yeah, throughout the whole book.
So where else do we see that metaphor?
Well, one that comes to mind is Isaiah 37.31-32. Jerusalem's under siege, everyone's terrified, and Isaiah gives this message of hope. He talks about the remnant as offspring, like God saying, don't worry, I still have a plan for my children.
Even in the middle of all that chaos.
Even then,
Yeah.
there is a future for those who stay faithful.
It's a good reminder that even when things are really bad, God's still there, protecting, guiding, like a parent.
Exactly. And then there's Isaiah 66.13.
What's that one about?
This was beautiful. It paints this picture of God as a comforting mother.
A mother.
Yeah. It's so tender, so intimate. It shows us that compassionate, nurturing side of God's love.
That's interesting. It goes beyond just the father figure we often think of.
It does. We see both strength and tenderness, discipline and comfort.
A more complete picture of what it means to be a parent.
And a more complete picture of God's parental heart. And this idea of God's children. It's not limited to Israel either.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isaiah 54.13 talks about the servants as God's children.
So it's expanding outward.
It is like this vision of a global family, all united under the care of a loving God.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. But let's get back to those themes we touched on earlier, knowledge and understanding.
Oh, yeah, good point. I'm curious how those ideas develop.
Me too. Well, there's one passage that's super striking, Isaiah 53.11. It talks about the servant's knowledge.
The servant.
Yeah, and Christians often interpret this figure as Jesus. It describes him as having this deep understanding of God's will.
Like more than just knowing facts about God.
Way more. It's about a deep experiential knowledge, the kind you get from a really close relationship.
Knowing God from the inside out.
Exactly. Understanding his heart, his ways, and that knowledge changes you.
It's not passive.
No. It leads you to action. Sometimes even to suffering and sacrifice.
Wow.
But ultimately, it brings redemption and reconciliation.
So it's knowledge that changes how you live.
Yeah. Makes you make different choices. Choices that line up with God's will, even when it's hard.
Powerful stuff.
And then there's Isaiah 11.9. This one gives us this incredible vision of the future.
What kind of vision?
It talks about the earth being filled with the knowledge of the Lord.
So everyone knows God. What does that even look like?
Imagine a world where God's truth and justice, they're everywhere.
In every part of life.
No more violence, oppression, ignorance.
People living in harmony with each other, with creation.
All guided by that deep understanding of God's ways.
It sounds kind of utopian.
It does.
Yeah.
But if knowing God really can transform people,
then maybe it's not so impossible.
right, it could start with one person, then spread to their community, to society.
It's a ripple effect.
It is. But then, Isaiah throws in a twist.
Yeah.
In Isaiah 55.8-9.
What's the twist?
He compares human understanding to divine understanding, and he says,
What does he say?
my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways.
Oh, wow. That's humbling.
It is. Like a reality check. We can't box God in.
Trying to make him fit our own little categories.
Right. Our human understanding, it's so limited compared to God's infinite wisdom.
And that brings us back to that parent-child idea again, doesn't it?
It does. Just like a child trusts their parent.
Even when they don't understand everything.
We're called to trust God, even when his ways seem mysterious.
I've definitely been there. Questioning God's plans, wondering why things happen the way they do.
Maybe it's less about having all the answers and more about surrendering to a wisdom that's bigger than ours.
I like that. Surrendering.
It gets to the heart of what Isaiah is teaching us. It's not about mastering God. It's about learning to trust him.
Even when we don't get it.
Even then. So,
Yeah.
we've got this mix of parental love, knowledge, understanding. What does it all mean for us today?
Right. How do we take these ancient words and apply them to our lives?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is a big question. We've talked about some pretty complex ideas. So how does this connect to us, to the people listening? What can they take away from all this?
I think one of the biggest takeaways is that Isaiah, he's asking us to look inward, to reflect.
So it's not just about pointing fingers at those people back then.
Right. He's not just saying, look how they messed up. He's holding up a mirror to all of us, challenging us to examine our own relationship with God.
So it's a history lesson.
Yes.
But it's also a challenge, a call to action.
Exactly. Isaiah is asking, are we seeing where our blessings come from? Do we realize how much we depend on something bigger than ourselves?
Are we like those oxen and donkeys, going through life without really getting it?
That's the question, isn't it?
It's easy to get caught up in the everyday stuff and forget to ask ourselves, am I feeding my soul? Am I connected to what really matters?
It's so easy to lose sight of that.
It is. But Isaiah, he's offering us a way back.
He is. He's saying, look, I know you've messed up. We all do. But it's not too late. Come back to the source. Let me show you how.
There's a lot of grace in that.
So much grace. It's not about judgment. It's about hope. About starting over.
And that starts with admitting we need God.
It does. Humbling ourselves. Realizing we don't have all the answers. Letting His wisdom and love be our guide.
It's like trading in our limited view for a bigger perspective.
Exactly. And that's when things really start to change. When we surrender to something beyond ourselves, that's when we can experience life in a whole new way.
You know, as we finish up this deep dive into Isaiah 1.2-3, I'm thinking about those feeding troughs in my own life.
Yeah.
What am I missing? Where am I blind to the good things that are right there?
It's a good question to ask ourselves.
Yeah.
And I'd add, how can we be like Isaiah? How can we be voices of truth? How can we help others see that they need God too? And experience that love that can change everything.
Those are questions we should all wrestle with. And I hope this deep dive, it's given everyone listening a place to start.
Me too. And remember, this is just one little piece of what Isaiah has to say. There's so much more to explore.
So keep digging, keep asking questions, and keep searching for that deeper understanding. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Isaiah. Until next time, keep exploring.